Are you ready? So, Sam,
Sam.
Yeah. Who's Sam?
If there's anything I say that maybe I use Pali words and stuff and you don't understand, maybe can I ask, does everybody understand the Pali words that I used in the, in the Satipatthana Sutta and all? Yes? Anybody doesn't understand? Okay, so I'll try to remember to use the English. Okay.
Now we can start.
Yeah.
Okay, Satipatthana.
Sayadaw is going to talk to us about the Satipatthana, what type of meditation, based on Satipatthana.
Meditation. So
first he'll tell us what meditation is.
Meditation is meditation.
Meditation is the cultivation of the good qualities of our minds. These are called kusala. So we all have good qualities of mind, and we also have poor qualities of mind, or negative qualities of mind. And when we choose to cultivate the positive qualities of mind, the good qualities of mind, and we choose to abandon or work to understand and lessen the poor qualities of mind, this is called meditation. This meditation is called Satipatthana because what we use to do this meditation, the leading faculty is sati. And using sati, what we are trying to develop is in particular 5 good qualities of mind. It is sati itself, and then sati is remembering, and then there is samadhi, which is the stability of our minds. There's virya, which is right effort. He will explain it. And then there is saddha, which is faith or confidence in the practice of meditation. And finally panya, which is the wisdom. These 5 qualities we are trying to cultivate by using sati. So every time we are mindful, every moment that we are mindful, these 5 qualities actually work together. And as you meditate, you'll realize how much, not just how much, you'll realize that what is doing the meditation is your mind. Yeah, that will become clear to you. And when we meditate, there's always 2 parts to the meditation. There is the mind that is being aware. That's you trying to meditate. And then there is the things that we observe. We will call the things that we observe objects. So the objects that you know, the experiences that you have, these are all objects. So there's 2 parts, and we are more concerned with the part that we play, which is the awareness that we put in, the mind that is being aware. And it is in this mind that is being aware, the way that we are being aware, that it is important that we hold good qualities, that we are not, not at least consciously choosing to use any unskillful ways of being aware.
ပါလာတတ်တယ်
But you will find that because it's the habit of our minds, that even while we try to meditate and try to be positive while we meditate, that our old habits come in. And we find ourselves trying to be aware, and we're anxious about what we're aware of. Or we have greed, and we want to be aware of something in particular, and so on.
အဲ့လိုဆိုရင်သူအားပူဆိုင်တယ်လူချင်းလာပြီဆိုရင်လောဘပန်လာရင်အားရအများကြီးစိုက်တယ်အားမရတော့ဘူးမချေမနှက်ဖြစ်လာအားရအများကြီးစိုက်တယ်နောက်ဘာလို့မှမသိနေတော့ရန်တမ်းပြီးတော့အားရအများကြီးစိုက်တယ်ဒီအားစိုက်တော့သတိထားပါ
And the result of having an unskillful way of being aware is that we start using too much energy. So you'll find, and too much energy is usually, it usually manifests as focusing a lot. So you'll find that if you're wanting your experience to be a certain way, you start using a lot of effort to try and make it go that way. If you don't like what you're experiencing and you want it to go away, you tend to use too much effort to try and make it go away. You may not notice that that's your motivation, but if you notice that you're using too much effort, and if you check, you might find that there.
အဲ့တော့သူတို့ပါလာရင်ဒါကိုသူက wrong practice လို့ခေါ်တယ် practice အမှားနေပြီ
So when we get into that mode, we have begun to practice incorrectly.
အဲ့တော့ result ကမကောင်းပြမနဲ့တင်းနေစိတ်သက်ကြတယ်အာကုန်တယ်
And then we get the results
ကို
of
ပြမ
that.
စိတ်ပြမဖြစ်တယ်
We get the results of that. We start to find ourselves getting tired, tense, tight, upset, frustrated. Both mind and body
ပြင်း
get
နေ
tired.
ပြင်းလာတယ်
Sometimes we get bored.
ဒီကဲလို့နာ right practice ဖြစ်ရင်ဒီအားထုတ်တာမှန်နေဆိုရင်ဒီကုသိုလ်စိတ်ဓာတ်ဖြစ်မယ်ဆိုရင်သူစိတ်ရကြည်လာမယ်လန်းဆန်းလာမယ်အားရှိလာမယ်စိတ်ဝင်စားလာမယ်လှုပ်ချင်ကန်ချင်စိတ်တွေတိုးလာ
He says, but if we are practicing correctly, we will find that the way we feel as we continue to practice is the mind feels lighter, we get more interested, we feel strong, we feel confident, we feel fresh. It feels interesting.
ဒါကုသိုလ်စိတ်ရဲ့အကျိုးပေးရအဲ့တိုင်းပဲလား
And this is the result of having being positive in the way we are being aware. Yes.
ကုသိုလ်စိတ်တွေပွားများပြီဆိုရင်ဒီကုသိုလ်စိတ်တွေရဲ့ quality အားကောင်းလာရင်ဆိုဒီလိုအကျိုးပေးရအဲ့လိုပဲလားမှာ
So if these positive qualities are operating in the way that we are being aware, then you will find the results come quite naturally.
အဲ့တော့တရားအထုတ်တဲ့ယောဂီတွေကအဲ့မှာအစသမားတွေတော့အဓိကထားပြောနေတာပေါ့နော်တရားအထုတ်တဲ့ယောဂီတွေအတွက်ပထမအရေးကြီးဆုံးကအာထုတ်တတ်ဖို့အရေးကြီးတယ်ဘယ်လိုစိတ်နဲ့ဘယ်လိုမျိုးဘယ်လိုသဘောထားနဲ့ဘယ်လိုအာထုတ်ရမလဲဆိုတော့ဒါကိုနားလည်ဖို့အရေးကြီးတယ်ဟုတ်ပြီနော်
And Seattle says, for all of us, learning how to practice with this in this skillful way, where the way we are being aware is skillful. That is the first and most important lesson that we want to learn from the meditation itself.
အဲ့တော့အစမှစိတ်ကိုမြင်ရတာလည်းခက်တယ်အဲ့တော့ခဏခဏပြန်ကြည့်ပေးမှပြန်စစ်မှစိတ်ကိုနည်းနည်းတိကြည့်တတ်လာပြီဆိုရင်တော့ပို့ပြီးတော့အဆင်ပြေလာလိမ့်မယ်
And in the beginning, for some of us, it might feel a little difficult. We don't really know what we're looking for. Am I practicing skillfully or not? What am I supposed to look for? And that's all right, he says. We just practice. And as we practice and we discuss with him, and he points out things to us which is in our, normal way of being, we will slowly begin to tune in and understand what we're looking for. And it's not something strange and wonderful. It's quite
အရေးကြီး
ordinary.
ဆုံးဟာရင်ပြောမယ်ပထမအရေးကြီးဆုံးဒီအားဆိုင်တာပဲစူးစိုက်တာများတာကိုပြောရှော့ပါ
And one of the first things he'd like us to do in a very simple way is just to, if we have a practice where we focus on things, to stop focusing or focus less.
ဘာလို့ရှော့လဲဆိုတော့ဒီကိလေသာအောက်ရှော့တာပဲ
And what he says, what it helps us to do is when we focus less, we also give less energy to those unskillful patterns of our minds, the unskillful energies of focusing with greed or focusing with aversion or focusing with delusion.
ဘယ်ကိစ္စပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်မကျွမ်းကျင်သေးရင်တော့အားကိုမတိုးအောင်
ကျွမ်းကျင်
မကျွမ်းကျင်နေရင်တော့အကူမတော့အောင်ကျွမ်းကျင်လာရင်တော့သူကြိုက်တယ်လို့သူအဆင်ပြေတယ်လို့လုပ်လို့ရတာပေါ့
Yes, he says it's sort of like, when we're not skillful at something, we shouldn't put our full energy into it because we might do it wrong in a very strong way. So we should approach it tentatively because we don't know yet. We don't want to put all the energy incorrectly into something. So he says, approach it gently.
ကိုယ်စေတော့တောင်းတဖြစ်ရမယ်စိတ်ဝင်စားမှုရှိရမယ်
So we want to be relaxed in body and mind and just be interested.
လောဘနဲ့အမထိုးအောင်ဆိုတာအဓိကကတော့ဖြစ်ချင်တာပဲရချင်တာကောင်းချင်တာရဖြစ်လိုချင်တာတွေရအောင်ကြိုးစားနေဒါလေးကိုနည်းနည်းလျှော့လာ
And what is practicing with greed is basically we want something. We think the meditation should be a certain way. We want good practice. We think we should have good practice. He says, and he wants to relax this. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. Just relax and be with whatever it is. It's okay.
ဘာဖြစ်လို့အားရအများကြီးစိုက်နေလဲဆိုတော့ရချင်လို့လိုချင်လို့ကောင်းချင်လို့အခုကိုရအောင်လုပ်နေလို့သူအားရအများကြီးစိုက်နေ
Because when we start focusing, it's usually because we want something. There's something we think it should be, or we want it to be. We would like to. We think it's better. When we have these thoughts about our practice, we start to focus.
စိတ်ရဲ့တဘာဝကစိတ်ရဲ့တဘာဝဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ပြတ်သွားတယ်မှန်တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ဘာကြံခဲ့လဲဆိုတော့တတ္တိတွေကြံခဲ့တယ်ကောင်းတဲ့စိတ်ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်မကောင်းတဲ့စိတ်ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်တတ္တိတွေနောက်စိတ်ကိုပုတ်ပြီးခြံခဲ့တယ်အဲ့တော့စိတ်တွေကိုဖြစ်ခွင့်များပေးရင်တတ္တိကကောင်းလားကောင်းတဲ့စိတ်ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်မကောင်းတဲ့စိတ်ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်
And he explains that the nature of the mind is to arise and pass away. But the good news is that every time the mind arises and passes away, it passes on its qualities to the next mind that is going to arise. So the next mind inherits the qualities of the previous mind. And if mind after mind we put in a moment of awareness, then that quality is passed on to the next mind. And if we are trying to do this all day long, the quality of awareness is being passed on and is getting stronger simply because of every moment of awareness being passed on to the next mind.
အစိတ်ရဲ့တဘာဝ law of mind ပဲ
This is just the nature of the mind, that if we do something repeatedly, that becomes stronger in the mind.
စိတ်အားကောင်းဖို့တတိတမာရီတွေအားကောင်းလာဖို့ကအစိတ်စရာမလို့ဘာပဲလို့လဲဆိုတော့ဆွဆွမြဲမြဲပွားများဖို့လို့တယ်
So to make any quality in our mind stronger, Sayadaw says we don't have to do that quality strongly. We just have to do the quality repeatedly. So if we want to have metta, we just try to do it again and again, and it should get stronger. We don't have to try to do it a lot in one moment.
လူတွေဘာလို့ဒေါသကြီးတယ်
He says, do you know why people, some people have really hot tempers? Why is that?
ခဏခဏဒေါသဖြစ်ခွင့်ပေးလို့
It's because they allow themselves to express their anger to that degree many, many times. They've allowed their mind to do it.
ပြောရမယ်ဆိုသူ practice ကောင်းကောင်းလုပ်တယ်ပေါ့
So they've been practicing having a hot temper very well.
အဲ့တော့ဒီတတိတမာရီနဲ့အားကောင်းခြင်းအမြဲတမ်းအားထုတ်ရမှာ
So if we want our awareness, our stability of mind, our wisdom to get stronger, then we just have to allow them to be around as much as possible.
အဲ့တော့တရားထုတ်ခြင်းကဒီမှာတရားထုတ်ဖို့ခေါင်းမလုပ်ပြီဘူးမကောင်းဘူးတရားထုတ်ဖို့ခေါင်းမလုပ်ပြီတော့သူအချင်းပြည့်ပဲမနေ့အဲ့ရထားရညအဲ့ရဝင်တရားထုတ်ခြင်းပဲ
So Sayadaw is not giving us a gong for when to be aware. Nobody's going to beat a drum for when you have to be aware, because you have to be aware as much as possible throughout the day. All the time if possible. That's your schedule.
အဲ့ရထားရညအဲ့ရဝင်တရားထုတ်ခြင်းဒါတော့ဟို understood ဖြစ်နေရမှာ
From the moment you wake up in the morning until you fall asleep at night, it's understood that you are trying your best to be aware.
တရားထုတ်ဖို့ခေါင်းလုပ်ပေးအောင်မလား
Does he still need to get someone to ring a gong for awareness? you want to remind them? Then somebody will be going around beating the drum all day long. We can take turns.
အရေးကြီးတဲ့အချိန်တော့ပဲဟိုလူစုဖို့လိုတာတော့ပဲခေါင်းလုံးမကျန်တာကျန်တာကိုယ် schedule နဲ့ကိုယ်ပဲ
So the gong on this retreat is for when people need to gather together in one place. The rest of the time that we're on our own schedule. You can make your own schedule of how you want to spend your time, being aware.
ပထမတစ်ချက်အရေးကြီးတာကဟိုအမဆိုင်ဘူးနော်
So that first thing is do not focus too hard.
ဒုတိယအရေးကြီးဆုံးကသဘောထားမှန်ဖို့
The second thing is to have the right attitude.
တရားထုတ်တဲ့နေရာမှာလူတိုင်းကတော့ wrong idea ကရှိပြီးသားဖြစ်နေဒီရုပ်နဲ့ဒီစိတ် process ကိုငါလို့ထင်ထားတဲ့အယူမရအားကြီးတယ်ဒီစိတ်နဲ့တရားထုတ်ဝိပဿနာအထုတ်လို့ကိုမရ
And the wrong attitude or the wrong view is all of us have this view when we think of ourselves. We identify this as me. Hold up here.
စိတ်ဖြစ်စဉ်ရုပ်ဖြစ်စဉ်ကိုဒီခန္ဓာဖြစ်ကိုမှဖြစ်တဲ့ဖြစ်စဉ်တွေရုပ်ဖြစ်စဉ်တွေကိုငါလို့ထင်တဲ့အထင်နဲ့
Yeah. So we think of this, the mental processes and the bodily processes that go on in this being, we think of it as me, I.
အဲ့စိတ်နဲ့ဝိပဿနာအထုတ်လို့မရဘူး
But when we have this sense of identification, it makes the practice of vipassana a little difficult.
ဘာဖြစ်လို့ဆိုတော့ဒီငါ့ကိုအာယုံပြုပြီးအထုတ်ရင်တော့ကိလေသာအကြီးကြီးလာ
And how it makes it difficult is that when we identify with what we are observing, it allows more of the unwholesome qualities to arise, allows more, like we might get frustrated with what we're observing, or upset with what we're observing, or or elated. And this is because we think this is me, this is happening to me, this is my
ငါနဲ့
mind.
ပတ်သက်လာငါ့ကိုအဘိုးပြုပြီးစဉ်းစားလိုက်တာနဲ့လိုချင်တာတွေအကြီးလာတယ်မချင်တာတွေအကြီးလာကြောက်စိတ်တွေအကြီးလာတယ်စိုးရိမ်တာတွေအများအကြီးလာတယ်
Yeah. So once I am in the center of this universe that we are observing, he says then whatever we observe, it's easy to get either attached to it, or not like it, or get anxious that it's there, or even afraid of what we see. If we don't think of it as being just
ဥ
processes.
ပမာငါခန္ဓာကိုယ်မှာပူတာအေးတာဆိုရင်ငါပူတယ်ငါအေးတယ်လို့ပဲထင်တာပဲရုပ်ကိုလည်းငါလို့ထင်တယ်ဒီခန္ဓာကိုယ်မှာဖြစ်တဲ့သဘောတရားလေးငါလို့ထင်တယ်နောက်စိတ်ကိုလည်းငါလို့ထင်တယ်ပို့တော်ဆွဲတည်တဲ့စိတ်ကြခံစားရတယ်ငါတိတာလည်းငါလှုပ်ချင်တာလည်းငါအဲ့တော့စိတ်တည်အလုံးသူငါလို့ထင်တာ
Our
အဲ့တော့အဲ့ထင်မှန်းနဲ့ကြည့်ရင်ဒီ definement တွေများများတွေးလို့ရှိရင်တွေးမှာပဲစိတ်ကိုပြန်ကြည့်တဲ့ခါကျရင်ဒီမကောင်းတဲ့စိတ်တွေအများကြီးတွေးလိမ့်မယ်အဲ့ချိန်ကျရင်သူက depression ဖြစ်အောင်depression
belief in these sets of mental and physical processes being me is very strong. You know, we think I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm sick, and then that can sometimes, we can sort of sometimes say, okay, this is happening in the body or something like that. But he says our attachment to the mind is even stronger. And when we are practicing awareness, we're becoming aware of what's happening in the mind. And when we identify with what's happening in the mind as what's happening to me, he says, then we have all these reactions. It's like we see maybe anger arising in the mind or greed arising in the mind. That's going to happen, And then what happens is we have this reaction, oh, this is not, why is my mind like this? Because we've identified. Instead of seeing greed is like this or anger is like this, we identify, and that makes it difficult.
ကောင်းတဲ့စိတ်တွေမြင်နေတော့မာနတွေတက်လာ
And then if we see positive states of mind, oh, I have good samadhi, then we start to get a bit
မာနတွေဖြစ်
maybe a bit arrogant, maybe happy.
အဲ့တော့ဉာဏ်မဖြစ်ဘဲနဲ့ကိလေသာတွေပဲအကြီးလာတတ်တယ်ဒါကြောင့်မလို့ဒီ raw view နဲ့တရားဝိပဿနာအထုတ်လို့မရဘူးဉာဏ်မဖြစ်ဘူး
So the idea is actually that we observe these processes and begin to understand how these minds work. Oh, greed works like this, anger works like this. And then if we understand the processes and the nature of these minds more, we become free of their ensnarement, of being caught up in them. We become free of them and we're not slaves to them. But when we can't see it that way, when we think of this as me, then
ဉာဏ်မဖြစ်ဘူး
then the wisdom doesn't come. Yes, the wisdom doesn't come. the understanding of those minds, instead of the understanding arising, we have more defilements because we are caught in those experiences and identifying with them.
အဲ့တော့ဒီ knowledge ရထားမှဖြစ်မယ်ဒီရုပ်ဖြစ်စဉ်စိတ်ဖြစ်စဉ်ဟာတဘာဝတရားပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တ attva မဟုတ်ဘူးဆိုတဲ့ဒီသဘောတရားကိုတော့အနည်းဆုံးကြားဘူးနားရှိရမယ်
So although it may be hard to just believe this concept, you don't have to believe it, Sayadaw says, you just need to hold it in your mind. Just hold it in the mind and remember it when you are being aware, if you can. I wonder what it's like to think that anger is just anger instead of I am angry, you know, that sort of thing.
လူတိုင်းမှာ anger ရှိတာပဲ anger တဘာဝအတူတူပဲတဘာဝပဲဒါတဘာဝတရားတစ်ခုလို့အဲ့လိုပဲစဉ်းစားတာ
If you can think of, for example, you know, anger, if you can consider it this way, that everybody can get angry. If everybody can get angry, then anger as a quality isn't something that belongs to me. It's universal. It's a quality that can be experienced. But anger has its own qualities because every time someone is angry, they display very similar qualities. And so we want to understand what these qualities of anger are, the nature of anger itself.
အဲ့တော့ဒီရုပ်ဖြစ်စဉ်စိတ်ဖြစ်စဉ်တွေကိုတဘာဝလို့နှလုံးသွင်းအရင်ဆုံးနှလုံးဒီ background view ကဒီအဲ့ point of view နဲ့ကြည့်ရမယ်ဒါအဲ့ point of view နဲ့အထုံးမှသူကတဘာဝကိုတဘာဝလို့မြင်မှာ
So if we can bring this view in every time we observe our bodily processes, the physical processes and the mental processes, if we can remember to bring in this view as much as possible, it will really help us.
ဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ပဲဆိုတာအရှိတိုင်းသိဖို့ဆိုတော့ဉာဏ်ဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတာစိတ်ကဒီခုနအထင်မှမရှိရဘူးအလိုချင်တာမရှိရဘူးမကြိုက်တာမရှိရဘူးအဲ့စိတ်တွေမရှိမှသူအရှိတိုင်းသိနိုင်တဲ့ဉာဏ်ဖြစ်နိုင်တယ်
Because insight is often described as understanding things as they are. And to understand something as it is, then we must not have attachment to what we are observing, we must not have resistance to it, and we must not have a delusion about it, our beliefs about it. So we remove these, well, through the practice, we slowly hope to do that. And when we're able to tune into that space, then we see things as they really are.
A point of view, right view, ဒါကြောင့်ဒါ right view လို့ခေါ်တာ nature လို့ပဲစဉ်းစား
So
point of view နဲ့အထောက်
So that's why then it's called right view. When we see nature as just what it is, it's nature.
ရုပ်မှာပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်စိတ်မှာပဲဖြစ်ဘာပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်ကိုယ်ခန္ဓာမှာ experience မှန်သမျှဟာတဘာဝတရားလို့နှလုံးသွင်းမယ်ပြီးရင်သူ့ကိုသတိထားကြည့်မယ်
So we will remind ourselves that whatever we're observing in the physical and the mental, that it's nature, we are observing its nature, and we're being aware of it.
ဘာဖြစ်လို့ aware လုပ်တာလဲ
And why are we being aware? Anybody know why we are being aware? No.
ဆရာခိုင်းလို့ပါ
Just because he said so. He said be aware, so we are going to be aware. Is that, yes? No? To learn?
Yeah. သိချင်လို့အဲ့ nature ကိုတဘာဝကိုသိချင်လို့ aware လုပ်တာပဲ
That's right, because we want to learn, to discover, to know ourselves better.
awareness မှာသူ option တစ်ခုရှိတယ်သူ function သူအလုပ်တစ်ခုလုပ်တယ်အဲ့ awareness ကိုခန့်ထပ် aware လုပ်နေတဲ့အဓိပ္ပာယ်ကသူ့ကိုသူပွားနေတာတစ်ပိုင်းရယ်နောက်တစ်ခုက information တွေစုနေတာ channel တွေစုနေတာ
So when we are being aware, Sayadaw says two things happen, two sort of things get fulfilled at the same time. One is because we are aware continuously, the quality of awareness is building in our mind, so that's becoming stronger. The other thing is that when we are aware, the mind is picking up information. Whether we know it or not, the mind is picking up information, and so our knowledge will grow.
information က complete ဖြစ်လာမှ understanding ကဆုံးဖြတ်လို့ရ
And once the mind has enough information, it will be able to understand something better, more completely.
အဲ့တော့ဒါအရေးကြီးတဲ့အချက်တစ်ချက်အဲ့ relax ကိုယ်စိတ်ကိုတတောင်းတအားထုတ်ရမယ်နောက်တစ်ခုက right view ရှိရမယ်
So we have to be relaxed in body and mind, and we need to have right view. We need to remember to have right view.
အရေးကြီးတဲ့ channel ချက်
So these are the two important things, yes? No, less focusing and be relaxed. 2, right attitude or right view.
အခုပြောမယ့်ဟာတွေကတော့ right information ပေးတာပဲပေါ့နော်ဒီ quality ရောစိတ်တွေရဲ့ quality ကိုအဓိပ္ပာယ်ရှင်းပြမယ်ဒါမှတိမှတော့အားထုတ်လို့ရမယ်အဓိပ္ပာယ် definition ကိုတိမှကိုပဲစိတ်နဲ့ဘယ်လိုအားထုတ်ရလဲဆိုတော့တိမှ
And Seattle is going to, I think, explain some of the mental qualities to us. He says it's helpful to understand them in words so that when we're practicing, we can see that, oh, this is how the mind is working. We have words to describe.
Awareness,
the first one is the quality called sati. What is sati?
Remembering.
Sati is remembering, or more precisely, it's not forgetting. What is it not forgetting? And sati is not forgetting what is happening in here, the nama rupa. And nama rupa is not body. Rupa is not body. So it may be physical processes. And nama is the mental processes. So nama rupa, the physical and mental processes. If you want another way of thinking of the physical and mental processes, it's knowing the 6 sense doors. So 5 sense doors are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, our physical senses. And then you have another sense door, that's your mind. So not forgetting to be in touch with the 6 sense doors or the mental and bodily processes. Right now, if you would just be aware of yourself, do you notice, for example, that you are sitting? Yes? Yeah. And do you notice that you are seeing? Yes?
Are you sure?
Really? You are clearly aware now that you are seeing. Yes? Yes. When did you notice that you are seeing? When? And when did you start paying attention to it? When he said it?
Yes. How about it?
So he wants to point out to us how much we could be knowing about our experience that we are not in touch with. We are seeing all the time, but we are not conscious of it. We see, we hear, we look, we listen all day long, but we are not aware of it. That's delusion at work. And to recognize that you were seeing when he mentioned it, did you have to use much energy? Did you need to focus? No, you just knew. And that's awareness. And knowing that you are seeing is becoming conscious of your sight, being conscious of the fact that you have the ability to see. It's not the thing that you see. Knowing seeing is not that you are seeing this picture or him or the...
Not seeing things.
It's a sense of seeing.
Yeah.
Looking is when you look at the object. Yeah, so when you close your eyes, seeing doesn't happen. And then when you open your eyes, seeing is happening. So that nature of seeing, just recognizing that sense of sight, that is something that we can be aware of.
Seeing and looking at two.
And seeing and looking are not the same. Yeah?
I don't know.
Yes. And do you see because you look, or do you look because you see? Yeah. မြင်လို့ကြည့်တာ မြင်လို့ကြည့်နိုင်တာပေါ့
ဟုတ်တယ်အဲ့ဒါမှ
So we can look because we see, right? Yes.
အဲ့တော့တဘာဝမတူ
These two natures are different. One is active and one is passive.
ဒီ retreat မှာအဲ့မြင်တာနဲ့ကြည့်တာကိုအထုတ်ပါအထုတ်ခိုင်းမှာအဲ့ဟိုဒါများများအထုတ်ပါအရေးကြီးတယ်ဘာလို့ daily life မှာအများကြီးအထုတ်ရမှာ
On this retreat, Seattle would like to encourage us to recognize seeing and looking as much as we can, because in our lives we look and see all day long. It's something very useful to help us to be mindful.
တရားအထုတ်တဲ့လူကတကား6ပေါက်လုံးအထုတ်တတ်ရမယ်ခန္ဓာကိုယ်အယုံ body တစ်ခုတည်းနဲ့အထုတ်လို့မရဘူးမပြည့်စုံ
And to be really skillful at being mindful all the time, we need to be able to tune in to the awareness of all our 6 sense doors. Noticing what the mind is being aware of right now, whether it might be aware of seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting or touching or something in the mind. We need to tune into, we need to know, be familiar with all of them.
တချို့ဒီအထုတ်တာနဲ့အစိတ်လောက်ရှိပြီမြင်တော့အမထုတ်တတ်ဘူး
There are
ရှိတယ်
people,
ရှိတယ်ယောဂီတွေ
he says there are yogis who practice maybe 25 years and are surprised that they have never noticed seeing.
မဖြစ်တယ်တရားအထုတ်တာကြာလေးကျွမ်းကျင်လာမှာပေါ့ကျွမ်းကျင်လာရင်တကား6ပေါက်လုံးအထုတ်တတ်ရမယ်
But the more we practice, the more skillful we must become. And skillful means that we are at ease with everything in the Namarupa. And the Namarupa is all the 6 sense doors.
အခုကဘလူးမှမပြောတော့ဘလူးမှလည်းမလိမလုပ်အမထုတ်ကြဘူးတရားထိုင်မယ်ဆိုအထုတ်ပြီဆိုမျက်လုံးပဲပိတ်ထား
But often we don't hear this information, and so we don't recognize that it's a valid thing to be aware of. And then when we sit, often we have our eyes closed, and there's a very strong association with also meditation being sitting with the eyes closed. So then we never notice seeing.
မျက်စိပိတ်တယ်အထုတ်လို့ကတမထအတွက်ဥပဒနာအတွက်မဟုတ်ဝိပဿနာမျက်စိဖွင့်ပြီးတဲ့အထုတ်တတ်ရမှာ
Yeah, but we only need to close our eyes if we're going to do like samatha sort of meditation. If we want to do vipassana, we can practice with all our 6
အဲ့
senses.
သမထကသူလိုချင်တဲ့အာယုံတစ်ခုတည်းကိုရွေးရမှာဆိုတော့ဒီလူရဲ့စိတ်ကမျက်စိတကားပေါက်အများကြီးလာတယ်ပါစနိတော်တော်များများမျက်လုံးပို့ထားတစ်လုံးကဒါကိုဒီကနေတစ်စက်အာယုံပြုတာများတော့အကျင့်ပါတယ်အဲ့တော့သူတို့လိုချင်တဲ့နေရာကို 100% ပြည့်ရဖို့ဆိုတော့မျက်လုံးပိတ်ရတယ်နားပိတ်ရတယ်မကြားလေကောင်းလေမမြင်လေကောင်းလေအဲ့သမထဓမ္မအတွက်နော်
When we want to do a samatha type of practice, Yada says we need to close the eyes, because when we have our eyes open, actually there's a large percentage of our mind that is occupied with our senses, with seeing and so on, because you walk, you need to know where you're walking and so on, and the mind does it automatically. It's already doing it, but a large percentage of the mind is doing that activity subconsciously. So the mind can't focus 100% on one thing, which we want, if you want to do samatha practice, which is why for samatha practices, he says people close their eyes.
ဝိပဿနာ practice ကျတော့သူအာယုများများနဲ့ဆက်ဆံရမယ်အာယုတိုင်းကိုသူသိရမယ်အာယုများများနဲ့ဆက်ဆံရမယ်ဆိုတော့အာယုတိုင်းနဲ့သူအလေးချင်းလုပ်ထားရမယ်
But for a vipassana practice, he says we want the mind to be agile, to be flexible, to be responsive, to know which sense it is with, because we need to be able to move around and still be aware. So we need to be able to know what the mind is aware of.
ဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ဖို့ဆိုတော့သူအာယုတိုင်းအလုံးလုံးတော့သူတိနေမှာတိမှန်သူတတိလည်းကောင်းလာမယ်ဉာဏ်လည်းအလုံးလုံးလာဉာဏ်လည်းကောင်းလာ
ပြန်ပြောပါဗျာ
ဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ဖို့အထုတ်တယ်ဆိုတော့ဝိပဿနာဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ဖို့အထုတ်တယ်ဆိုတော့သူကအာယုတိုင်းနဲ့တိထားရမယ်ဆက်စပ်မှုတိထားရမယ်
ဆုံးမှာပေါ့
အဲ့တော့မှဉာဏ်ဖြစ်ခွင့်ရ
He says, but because the objective of vipassana practice also is wisdom, when we want wisdom, we need more complete information. So we need to have information from all our sense stores so that we have a more complete story of what we're observing and not a one-sided picture.
ကဲအခုပြောချင်တာကတော့ဒီဝိပဿနာအတွက်ဒီမျက်လုံးမြင်တာကြားတာတွေပို့ပြီးအထုတ်တဲ့အားလည်းဘဝထဲမှာအထုတ်လို့အဆင်ပြေအောင်လို့အထုတ်တတ်မှလည်းဘဝထဲမှာအတုံးချလို့ရ
So for vipassana practice, especially at home, you'll find that noticing, seeing and looking will make practicing at home much easier.
နော်ခက်ဘူးဒါမခက်ဘူးမခက်ဘူးနေတိုင်းလုပ်နေကြအလုပ်ကဲအခုတစ်ခုခုကြည့်နေလိုက်ကြည့်နေတယ်ပြီးကြည့်မှပြန်မသိဘူးလား
Yeah, because it's something we do at home so much. He says, just right now, try. He says, look at something. And then just notice that you're looking. Is that difficult?
စမ်းကြည့်ပါစမ်းကြည့်အခုစမ်းကြည့်ဘယ်လောက်ခက်လို့လဲ
Yeah, not difficult. And we do that so much at home. And if we could just recognize it, we'd have so much mindfulness at home.
ဒီနေ့တည်းဘယ်နှခါကြည့်ဘယ်နှခါကြည့်မယ်ထင်လဲ
Can you guess how many times we look in one day?
ဘယ်နှခါတည်တယ်လဲ
Well, and the next one is how many times do we notice that we look in one day?
မတွေ့ဘူးမတည်ဘူးအလေ့ကျင့်မရှိလို့အဲ
Just because we don't know that it's a valid practice. Something that we can do.
အလေ့ကျင့်ဒီလောက်လုံနေတဲ့အလုပ်ကိုအကျင့်ဖြစ်သွားရင်ညီနာနဲ့ကြည့်တာကိုအကျင့်ဖြစ်သွားရင်တော့တတိယအလိုလိုရောက်လာပြီ
And imagine, he says, if this was part of our practice, so much a part of our practice that it became a habit that every time we looked, the mind would, the awareness would pop up because we'd made it a habit to be aware every time we look. And then the awareness would just keep following us all day long because we do so much looking in the day that we'd have so much
ဒီမှာ
mindfulness.
practice လုပ်လို့ကောင်းတယ်ရှုခင်းအရင်ကောင်းတယ်
He says, and it's a great place to practice here because the views are awesome, amazing.
Looking ရယ် listening ရယ် pay attention ဒါ function အတူတူပဲတကားပါပဲကွာ
And he wants us to notice something about the way the mind works. We use the words looking when we pay attention to something we see. We use the word listen when we pay attention to something we hear or we want to hear. And we pay attention with the mind when we want to pay attention to something we know. Yes? And all these three functions of mind, they go through different sense doors. One is through seeing, one is through listening, one is through the mind. But it's the same movement of mind. It's paying attention.
အခုပြောနေတာတတိအကြောင်းပြောတယ်နော်အဲ့တော့ sense ကိုသိမြင်မှန်းသိရင်တတိကြားမှန်းသိရင်တတိအနံ့ရမှန်းသိတာတတိအရာဖြစ်မှန်းသိတာတတိခန္ဓာကိုယ်တစ်ခုလုံးမှာပဲ sensation ပဲဖြစ်သိတတိစိတ်ဖြစ်နေတတိသိ
And so we were talking about sati. And so now he wants to tell us how when we are aware of what's happening at our sense door, that is awareness. When you see and you recognize you see, that's awareness. If you look and you recognize you're looking, that's awareness. It's the same whether you listen or hear, taste or smell or touch or know or think. And if you recognize that the mind, if you recognize that these things are happening, that's awareness. That's sati.
အဲ့တော့လူတယောက်ကမေးတယ်ကိုဘေးကကားစီးဖြတ်သွားတာသူတိတယ်တဲ့အဲ့တရားထုတ်တဲ့တတိလားလို့သူကမေးတယ်
Yeah.
အဲ့တော့ဘယ်လိုဖြစ်မလဲ
So to illustrate this, Yadra has this little example. He says, a car passes by, and we're aware that the car passed by. Is that awareness?
meditation awareness လားလို့မျိုး
Is that the awareness that we speak about when we meditate? A car passes by, and we know the car passed by. Is that awareness? Sort of.
ကားဖြတ်တာခွေးတောင်သိတယ်
Yadra says, when the car passes by, everybody knows. Whether we're meditating or not, we know the car passed by.
တရားမထုတ်တဲ့လူတွေသိတာပဲ
Yeah? So,
အဲ့
that's
တရား
not
ထုတ်တဲ့လူ
all
တွေ
of
တတိ
it.
ကြတော့တရားထုတ်တဲ့လူတွေတတိကြတော့သူကဘာလို့အဲ့ကားဖြတ်သွားတော့ဘယ်လို sense ရသိလဲဆိုရင်မြင်မှန်းသိတယ်ကြားမှန်းသိတယ်နောက်ဒီခံစားမှုတွေးပြီးတော့အိဗယ်ဖော်တာသိတယ်အဲ့မှာတရားထုတ်တဲ့တတိဖြစ်မှာ
But the way awareness in meditation is different is the recognition of our senses in the experience of knowing a car pass by. So when you know that you saw, that's awareness. When you know that you heard, that's awareness. When you felt the vibrations of a car passing by, you know that you felt the vibrations. That's awareness. That's the awareness we're talking about in meditation.
ဟိုကားကြီးဖြတ်သွားတာ 100% ဒါ concept ကြီးပဲတဘောတရားသိတာမဟုတ်ဘူး sense တော့သိတာမဟုတ်ဘူးသူကတွေးပြီးတော့ပညာကြီးကိုသိတယ်
If all we knew is that a car passed by, that's just knowing the concept of the car passing by. It's when we are aware of our senses and how they contribute to our experience. That's awareness.
ရှင်းတယ်နော်
That's
awareness
okay.
အစိုက်စရာမလိုဘူးနော်
So you don't need to focus, right? So far, no need to focus? No. Good.
ဒါပေမဲ့ခဏတိပေးလို့ရှိရင်သူတိတဲ့အာအရန်ကောင်းလာလိမ့်မယ်ဆိုတော့တစ်ချိန်တည်းမှာတစ်ခုနဲ့မကောက်နှစ်ခုသုံးခုလေးခုပြန်တိလာလိမ့်မယ်
And he would like us to be patient. You know, he says if we're patient with the amount of awareness we have, whether it feels clear or not, and if we just do that continuously, he says you will see that it becomes stronger. You will see it becomes different. Your experience of awareness changes.
sensitive ဖြစ်လာလဲဆိုတော့ဘာလို့ sensitive ဖြစ်လာလဲဆိုတော့ဒီ sense တော့အာယုံတွေကိုသိတာ sensitive ဖြစ်လာတာ
You become sensitive to what's happening at your sense doors. That will heighten.
ဒါကိုယောဂီတယောက်ပြောတာပြည်တယ်သူမြင်တာသတိထားနေတဲ့အချိန်မှာကြားလာရကျဲလာတယ်
It's like one of the yogis said. He says when he became more and more aware of seeing, he noticed that he also became more sensitive to hearing. It's just because the awareness as a whole is growing.
ဒါတတိယတလောက်ဆိုရပြီတမာတိဆိုတာလဲစူးစိုက်လို့ရတာမဟုတ်ဘူးအမှန်တမာတိဆိုတာတည်ကြည်တာပြောတာတည်ကြည်တဲ့သဘောတမာတိပြောတာအဲ့တော့သဘောထားမှန်ရင်စိတ်ကကြိုက်တာတွေမကြိုက်တာတွေမဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်တည်ကြည်တယ်အဲ့လောက်ဆိုရပြီ
So that was about sati. And now we go on to samadhi, which we call stability of mind or steadiness of mind. And it's really just about being okay with the moment, the clarity of being with the moment. It doesn't have to be super clear. Sayadaw says it's more about being having the right attitude, being content with the moment as it is. That steadies the mind. If we're content with whatever we know, the mind is steady.
လူကျင်တာလည်းမဖြစ်ဘူးမကျေနပ်တာလည်းမဖြစ်ဘူးဆိုရင်ဒါတမာတိရှိရခေါ်တယ်
If we're not wanting the moment to be different, if we don't think, oh, you know, I should be seeing this much more clearly, if we don't have this thought, or we think, oh, this is not a good experience, how am I going to go through it? If we don't have these thoughts and we're just like, oh, this is what's happening now, he says the mind is already much more steady.
steady ဖြစ်တယ်ဆိုတာစူးစိုက်လို့လေစူးစိုက်တာမှန်လို့ရှိရင်လည်းတည်ငြိမ်ပါတယ်နောက်သဘောထားမှန်ရင်လည်းတည်ငြိမ်တယ်နှမျိုးရှိတယ်ဒီဝိပဿနာမှာသဘောထားမှန်တော့ပို့ဦးစားပေး
There's two ways that we, you know, can steady the mind. One is by being aware of something continuously, also in the right way, right? Then you get samadhi. Another way is just to have the right attitude or the right view. That gives the mind samadhi.
ခုနပြောအတန်တဘာဝပဲအတန်မှာကောင်းတာဆိုတာမရှိဘူးအတန်ပဲလို့နားလေအဲ့တော့နှလုံးသွင်းမှန်နေဆိုရင်အတန်နဲ့ပတ်သက်လို့လူချင်တာလည်းမရှိဘူးမချင်တာလည်းမဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်တမာတိဖြစ်တယ်
For example, he says, say there was a noise going around. Say there was a noise that we could hear. And if we had no preference about noise, if we had no preference about sound, we didn't think there should be sound, and we didn't think there should not be sound. We're just like, oh, there is sound. If we have that sort of attitude, he says, the mind would not be shaken. The mind would have samadhi, it would be steady. But if we had an opinion about it, good or bad, particularly bad, then we'd start to have emotions about it.
မတရားထိုင်တဲ့အခါမှာတရားထုတ်နေတဲ့အခါမှာအတန်ကြားတာရဲ့အတန်တိတ်ဆိတ်တာဘယ်ကောင်းမယ်လို့ထင်လဲ
So,
အတန်ရှိနေတာရဲ့အတန်တိတ်နေတာရဲ့
for meditation, what is our opinion on sound? Do you think it's better to meditate when it's silent or when it's noisy? What do you think?
ကဲလို့ silent ကိုကောင်းတယ်လို့ယူဆရင်အတန်ကြားနေဒုက္ခရောက်ပြီတမာတိပြက်ပြီဘယ်လောက်စူးစိုက်တဲ့တမာတိဆိုအဲ့ဒီညအကုန်ပြက်တာပဲ
And he'll explain the reason he asked this question. If we have an opinion that silence is good, then every time it's noisy, we're going to have a big problem trying to be aware because of our opinion. Yeah? And we won't have any steadiness of mind. No matter how hard you've been concentrating, you can be concentrating for hours, and if there's a sound, you're going to be in pieces.
အရှိကိုအရှိတိုင်းတွေးတာဒါတမာတိဖြစ်တယ်နော် right view ဖြစ်တယ်
But when we
ကြား
can,
တော့ကြားတယ်လို့အမှန်တိုင်းတွေးတာ
but when we can be really, you know, when we can really see that things are as they are, that if there is a sound, we are very honest about our experience, which is, now I hear sound, now sound is heard. He says, then that's right view. That's all there is in the moment. Sound is being heard, if there's no opinion.
စိတ်ထဲမှာလောဘဖြစ်နေတာဖြစ်မှန်းသိတာကိုတ ဒါလည်း right view ပဲအမရှိကိုရှိတိုင်းပဲရိုးရိုးလေးစဉ်းစားတာအမှန်တိုင်းစဉ်းစားတာ
But if there is an opinion, then that also can be seen with the right view. Oh, I have an opinion about it. You know, I have agreed for silence and recognizing that.
အဲ့တော့အရှိကိုရှိတိုင်းစဉ်းစားတတ်ဖို့အရေးကြီးတယ်ဝိပဿနာအထုတ်တဲ့နေရာမှာအမှန်တိုင်းပဲ
So in Vipassana practice, it's so important to be able to recognize the truth of what is happening in the moment as it is.
အာယုံဟာအာယုံပဲအာယုံမှာကောင်းတာဆိုတာမရှိဘူးအာယုံဟာအတိခံတဲ့သဘောပဲရှိတယ်
And whatever you know, it's perfectly fine as it is, because it's being known by you. It's a good moment because you are aware. And awareness is what we are aiming for.
experience ကိုသူကလိုက်ပြီးတော့အတိတ်ပဲဟိုမဝေဖန်တော့ကောင်းတယ်ဆိုတဲ့မွေးမှာ experience လို့ပဲယူလိုက်တော့
And if you appreciate that awareness is present, then the experience, whether, you know, we would judge it as a good experience or a bad experience, becomes irrelevant, because what is of importance in that moment, what is of value in the moment, is the awareness. And the experience will come and just be itself, but you are aware, and that's what you're trying to grow, is the awareness.
နော်အတွေးလည်းဒီလိုပဲအတွေးပေါ်မှာအယူဆမှန်ရင်အတွေးပေါ်မှာဒေါရမဖြစ်ဘူးအခုကယောဂီတော်တော်များများအတွေးရဲ့အတန်ရဲ့နာလာချင်တာပေါ်မှာဒေါရဖြစ်ရန်ဖြစ်နေရတာ ਨੇ အချိန်ကုန်တယ်
And the same happens with our thoughts and pain. We spend a lot of time thinking the mind should not be thinking. We spend a lot of time wishing the pain would go away. Actually, if the mind is thinking, we just need to know that the mind is thinking. So long as we're not lost in thought.
စိတ်ရဲ့ definition ကိုကအဲ့ဟိုသဘောမပေါက်သေးလို့ပါစိတ်ကိုဒီစိတ်ကိုအဓိပ္ပာယ်ဖွင့်တဲ့နေရာမှာ definition ဖွင့်တဲ့နေရာမှာသဘောတရားတစ်ခုကတွေးတတ်တယ်တဲ့ဒါကိုစိတ်လို့ခေါ်တယ်
It might be helpful, he said, to know something about the mind and its definition. The mind is one of the ways the mind is defined is that the mind is that which thinks. So because it thinks, therefore it is called mind.
အဲ့တော့စိတ်ဆုံးတွေးမှာပဲ
So if you have a mind, it's going to think.
မတွေးချင်လို့မရဘူးမတွေးအဆွေးမဖြစ်ချင်လို့မရဘူးဖြစ်မှာပဲဖြစ်မှန်ဖြစ်တော့အမှန်တိုင်းစိတ်ကိုစိတ်လို့ပဲနှလုံးသွင်းရအောင်
So you can't choose not to think. You know, the mind will think. That's its function. It should think. So, but if we would accept that and just recognize it, oh, this is the mind at work. The mind is thinking now. That's what we need to do.
အတွေးနေတယ်လို့ပဲသိရမှာအတွေးများရင်လည်းများလာလို့သိရမှာ
We can recognize the mind is thinking more now, or the mind is thinking less now. And that's how we can recognize.
စိတ်ငြိမ်လည်းငြိမ်တယ်လို့သိတယ်မငြိမ်လည်းမငြိမ်ဘူးလို့သိတယ်ကြောက်မို့လည်းမကြိုးစား
Sometimes we recognize that the mind is more quiet. Sometimes it's agitated. And we don't need it to change. We just need to recognize what it is like right now. And follow that process to see how it
ဖြစ်တာကိုဖြစ်တဲ့အတိုင်းစဉ်းစားမယ်ပြီးရင်အတိအမှပြုရုံပဲ
So we recognize what it is now. And we acknowledge what it is now. And we keep watching to see what happens to it.
acknowledge လို့ရုံပဲ